problem. You saw the fires. You saw one of our people spraying liquids onto that. We were trying to eliminate a horrific odor. I mean, if you could pan back and see what the sanitation workers there that were moving that stuff and dumping it, oh, I mean, they were gagging because the smell was just horrific. This was done after the Feast of Eid. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Feast of Eid is a celebratory feast. It's the end of fasting, and there's festivals and feasting and parties and lots of eating and all the things that go along with the celebration of ending of fasting. There's paint cans in there, there's plastic, there's bottles, there's residual of vegetable peelings, there's the cores of melons, there's partially digested or garbage tomatoes, all sorts of fats from animals and dumpings of cooking oils and all sorts of garbage type products put onto that area. Now, it's very important to point out that the municipal dump in Istanbul is one of the oldest cities in the world. It had been there for years. Now, the garbage, of course, was new, but the site had been there. Our people reported there wasn't a single weed, not a blade of grass, not a dandelion, not a tree, a shrub, nothing that was growing. It was devoid of growth. Hence, you had a barren situation. This was not a fertile plain. This was not the crescent of the steppes of Russia. This was nothing but a sterile, toxic, polluted dump. And unfortunately, we have so many of those in our own towns, in our own municipalities, it sickens me. But the idea is this was an area that was just sterile. No microbes growing. It was polluted. No vegetation. We went into that area, piled big old garbage trucks, just backed them up, dumped them. Took a D6 Caterpillar, just ran it down, big diesel. Run these things, breaking the bags open them up. We had to put a fence around it just to make sure that under Turkish standards, nothing was in there. Nobody went in there and, hey, we sprayed this secondarily. We cheated and we did this. None of that. It was guarded. Security guards. What we saw was, first of all, when our people sprayed out of a great big fire truck where the tank in the fire truck had solution, perfect science formula put in there. The first thing you notice is smiles start to come on the faces of the people that are standing around the dump. You see that? What you see is the smell has dropped. First of all, the fires went out, methane gas dropped. Vapor dome collapsed. The secondary issue. However, the smell was gone. Now, if we just take a minute and think about slaughtering houses, food processing plants, garbage dumps, all agriculture related, what would that technology alone mean to the quality of life and the environment in the community? I think we can agree that's pretty significant. However, they continued to spray the water onto this. What happened was that we were then putting the formula down and watering it. We soaked it in real good. Remember, sterile area, no vegetation, garbage. We watched over a period of time. About every other week, we'd go back with that fire truck, and over top of the fences, we'd spray water. Water only. No more formula, just water. Well, we'd go back periodically and check this and see this, and what we saw was spontaneous vegetative growth. Wait a minute. It's a sterile environment. There's no grass, there's no weeds, there's nothing. Where are these plants coming from? Out of the garbage? Out of the cans of paint, amidst the plastic and all the toxins and fatty oils and greases? Wow. Well, what we talked about a minute ago was that in the Feast of Eid, there's fruits and vegetables, seeds. Do you eat the seeds from a cantaloupe? I don't. Do you eat the seeds from a watermelon, from a squash? Well, probably not. Some of that ends up in the garbage. What we found was they had spontaneously sprouted. We were stunned. We didn't come in here to talk about agricultural fertility and growth and any kind of agriculture. What we saw suddenly was growth. Well, we monitored this after jubilation. We monitored this in amazement. And suddenly realized not only were they growing, they were flowering. They were going to go ahead and produce fruit. And every other week, we went in there and potentiated the water onto the dump. Remember, no smell came back. Products started breaking down in the dump. And here's this vegetative growth. As you see by the middle, almost the end of that segment, there's vines and plants are growing almost everywhere to the point you can't hardly see the garbage. And if we could have panned back a little, we did. You'd see that it really is covered with plants. But as the flowers started to come and the fruit started to develop, here are these fruits. Now, you know that a cantaloupe, a good-sized cantaloupe, okay, some of you have big cantaloupes. The point is, a cantaloupe is generally this size. These products were twice the size of that. Tomatoes all over the vines, not just a sporadic one or two. Remember, sterile environment. No fertility. We didn't spray this with Blossom. We didn't put fertilizers in there. We didn't do anything to increase nutrient value of that. Here comes this big fruit. So our team harvested some of the fruits as the summer started to progress, harvested some of the fruits and took them into the labs. Well, what do you think they found? That those fruits were full of toxins? No, no, no. The fact that those big old fruits and those loads of tomatoes were quality, were healthy, didn't have toxins in. That means that they came spontaneously out of garbage, came out. Now, if a product is not even designed to grow plants, put into a sterile environment of a dump, can produce vegetative growth, can increase yields, can produce a quality product of bigger sizes than normal production, what can a product like that do in your agricultural farms, in your grounds, in your backyard flower beds, in your home garden, in your herb garden, in your tomatoes, whatever you grow? What can it do for that? When we've honed in and focused on the specifics of the nutrients that those plants need, when we've put that same enzyme base, that catalyst for life and production in there, when we've put the perfect science energized water in there as a basis, what does that do for what you're growing? Now you're an agrarian, you're a farmer, you're out there in agriculture, you're knowledgeable, you know, you're a homeowner, you want to have beautiful grass, you want to have an charged up herb program in your yard, your wife loves to cook, or you do. You want your kids eating healthy vegetables, which is why probably you grow them in your backyard, or in your truck patch, or in your little garden on the farm, as opposed to going down to the store and buying them. Because you know what's in it. So, if you can do that predominantly organically, if you can do that environmentally friendly, if you can do it non-toxically, and get increased yields, I beg you, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? Randall, I wouldn't do that because the cost effectiveness is a key. I got to stay in business. You know, the markets are really tough. I have a real problem with the way corn prices fluctuate, or boy, if they even consider that we're going to have a frost, the prices just go nuts on fruit because obviously our crop's going to be negatively affected, particularly depending on the bloom. Yes, folks, economics do certainly play a role in this. Now, I don't pretend to tell you that I can fluctuate markets. I've had 6 years' experience in the commodity markets, so I understand price movements and seasonality and what happens to the citrus prices if there's a cold snap, or what happens to the soybean prices if there's a drought, or if there's flooding in the Midwest. I understand the value of cattle and how that fluctuates based on whether the corn crop is good and the value of the dollar and can people buy and what's the stock market doing to expendable income. I understand all those things. I'm not here today to tell you I can control markets. But what I am here to tell you today is if you'll implement perfect science technologies, and if you'll incorporate Blossom into your agricultural regime of management, you can increase your yields. And my friends, if there's one thing I've found in my years of farming, if there's one thing I've found, and I've been doing this for 30 years, I was born and raised on a farm in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. And yes, Lancaster County rivals you Floridians on what you produce per acre. Thank you very much. In any case, the bottom line is that I know about farm production, and I know you all do as well. The key situation is, in times of increased production, you'd rather have more of it, even if it's at a less price, than you would have low amounts of it when the prices are good. And I maintain, if you'll work with the regime of your current management and products like Super Blossom through those times of difficult economic times, you're going to be there for the windfalls when everybody else is that's not using products, who's affected by those freezes, and you're not. Oh boy, I see your eyes perking up. You're going to tune into that in a few minutes. But when you're there for those times of abundance, the markets are going to bless you when the prices are high and you're ready to hit it with a big bounteous crop, as opposed to your neighbors or friends or somebody in the next state who isn't on a program like this, who isn't as conscientious about it as you, who isn't maybe as environmentally friendly as what you're doing to take advantage of those windfalls. So those are issues that I want us to keep in mind as we talk about as we go forward. So the Garbage of Eden shows us that we attempted something that wasn't what our purpose was. But out of that came an incredible understanding that we could change soils, that we could increase productivity. And as we bored down on that, as we increased our staff and worked through the labs, etc., we found that some of the testing we were about to do could really be very exciting. There's one other point in that video I want to just bring out, and this is, again, not necessarily in agriculture. You saw one of the gentlemen standing there holding a light bulb, and he put the end of the wire, so to speak, into water. You didn't see the light bulb go on. And he talked about the fact when he put it into perfect science formula, that light bulb shone like the sun. Well, it talks about electronic activity and conductivity. And as we talk about in a few minutes, antifreeze. Wouldn't you love it if you could get through somehow that frost warning, or depending on the part of the country, that one frost you get at the beginning of October, and then, hello, it's Indian summer, you've had 5 or 4 more weeks of gorgeous growing, or at least productionable weather, but the frost took your crop out. Sorry, you don't get those extra 5 weeks. If we could somehow get you through that period and extend the growing season for you, would that be beneficial to you? I see heads nodding yes. I think so too. We're going to talk about the antifreeze. But that, putting in there, shows you the conductivity, shows you the hyperelectron. Remember, you all wrote that down. Keep that in mind. Cells are encapsulated with water. Hyperactivity is going on around those cells. So you can start to see if that electron activity is going enough to light that light bulb, what's going on in that plant? What's going on in your body when you're drinking the waters, etc.? What does that mean? It means warmth. It means electron activity. What that does is creates a scenario where you're not going to have a plant that freezes. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. What I want to bring out too, besides the garbage of Eden and what we saw and learned from that, is we did extensive testing, again, in Turkey. We did extensive testing in wheat, in products in their own beans, in some of their own citruses, in peas, in floral production, in grass production, hay farms. We did a lot of testing in that. Hence, and I think I passed out at some point in time, you all have in your packets, an application scenario. And we'll get to that in a minute or two. But keep in mind, we've done extensive testing over a wide range of products. The early tests we did, one of them that shocked us, and again, you need to understand that although we brainstormed and talked and watched through the evolution of how things were occurring, some of these things astounded us. We weren't ready for what we found. For instance, talk about wheat. And I know that maybe wheat's not a major crop here in Florida, but clearly it is in other parts of the country and certainly in other parts of the world. But in the wheat fields, we went into some of the most arid, salt-ridden, old, dried-up riverbed area that had a lot of rocks and was totally infertile. Nothing was growing there. A few weeds, but nothing significant was growing there. We actually planted wheat in that area. Now, this is pretty amazing. We planted wheat in the middle of summer, as many wheat farmers do in parts of the world. Turkey's climate is not unlike the certain areas of the United States, for sure. And we planted it in this rocky, salty, arid. You think it'll grow? You know, I don't know. Let's try it and see. What we did was we flooded the area that we were going to grow. It contained the blossom. And what we found is that, and this is subsequent to this, I'll just explain what we found. Well, let me back up. Before I explain what we found, I'll tell you what happened. We flooded the field, we planted it, we sowed it, periodically made sure it had a little water, not a lot, because it was an arid area and we were trying to do some testings on dryness. But we found that by February, not had only this crop come up, but it was yielding. It didn't have wheat rust, it didn't have any of the blight problems, it didn't have any of the negatives associated with insects or with diseases, etc. But the amazing thing was it was yielding four-fold, that's four-fold, compared to what normal wheat in a similar part of the better quality soil, but not treated with blossom, better part of the soil in the area was doing. 4 times the yield in February. Now, you may know that wheat farmers are probably staring at me saying, February? We don't harvest wheat in February. We harvest it in June or May or maybe July, depending, again, geographically where you are. Well, why did we harvest? Hey, grew. Didn't go dormant. Now, we all know dormancy. It's quiet, stagnant, it's alive, but it's not growing. This wheat continued to grow. Temperatures dropped into the 20s. Wheat should be dormant. It should be growing at 20 degrees, right? But it continued to grow. It continued to produce seed heads. It produced big old seed heads. So we went in there, 4-fold the yield in February. Randall, what? People were calling me, Randall, what's going on? What do you think this is? I wasn't there for all of it. What do you think this is? Well, we brainstormed about it. Of course, my statement was, well, obviously you didn't put enough water on there to make it happen, so it had to be something with keeping the water in the ground. Number 2 is you only use a certain amount of soil seed. You didn't seed it heavier so that in the same row, so to speak, the same area, you got extra product because you sowed